Social Security retirement benefits. What should you do? Should you wait to claim and allow your benefits to accrue and earn delayed retirement credits? Or should you claim as early as possible? Now, obviously, there could be a spectrum in between. Today's video, though, is going to be arguments for claiming early. Now, the math, if you live long enough, always says that you should delay claiming, but I want to go beyond the math. And I also today want to set aside one thing that I know that's probably in the back of your mind, which is, well, if I take Social Security early, then I can't do Roth conversions. Let's set that aside. I want you to take a paradigm 30,000 foot view on Social Security retirement benefits, and I want you to tick through some different risks and make sure that those are or are not appropriate before you decide that your default is to delay claiming. If you haven't seen my videos or this is your first time, my name is Forrest Dutton. I am a certified financial planner. I am the owner of Brightworks Financial Planning. The point of these videos is to educate you. It's to make sure you can retire with confidence. It's not personal, financial, tax, or investment advice. Let's jump in. Today's videos are also going to be loosely based on an interesting article that I read that was published by Derek Tharp. Derek Tharp was the writer at kitsis.com. You can see the article down below. I will link it. I'm just going to pull out some bullet points that have influenced my thinking, and I want to know what you think. So let's start this off. Almost always when I actually meet with clients, if they plan to retire before full retirement age, most of them come in with the bias saying they want to wait until full retirement age or maybe even 70. Now, there's good reasons for this. And the biggest reason most people claim is that if they live long enough, they're going to realize more benefits over their lifetime by letting their benefits inflate. Now, after full retirement age, which for anybody born 1960 and older is going to be 67, every year that you delay claiming, that's an 8% return. Now, beyond the math on this, though, I think some people discount the other things that are in play when it comes to waiting for your retirement benefits. This is especially important the earlier you retire. So if you retire at 60 and you want to claim at 70, you have to make sure that that entire decade you are making the right decision in terms of delaying your Social Security benefits. So I'm going to bring up a couple risks here that I think are most relevant. The first one is going to be sequence of return risk. I think that that is highly undervalued when it comes to making a decision about early Social Security retirement benefits claiming. So the argument goes like this. If you retire early, say you retire at age 60 and you want to take Social Security at 70, well, you have a 10-year period where your portfolio has to bear the brunt of your withdrawals and provide the income you need in retirement. Now, that is fine, but the problem is sequence of return risk is just the concept that has been well proven, well studied, that returns matter most at the beginning of your retirement, meaning the first 5 to 7 years. Say you have an annualized return of 5% over 30 years. Now, how you get to that 5% actually matters. That's sequence of return risk. If you have a few early years that are negative years, it can really negatively impact your portfolio value. So that really matters because if you drew Social Security earlier, then you could offset and shield some of those portfolio withdrawals to mitigate some of that sequence of return risk. So I do think you need to have a careful analysis of how much do you actually have in your portfolio? How much do you need to live off of? Are those two things a concern for you? That is a major risk that is discounted when you wait to draw Social Security. So the next thing is going to be mortality risk, and that's goes along closely with longevity risk, but it's different. And that basically just means if you die early, there's commonly a break-even point from the time period you start taking Social Security to when you have more lifetime benefits by waiting. Now, if you wake up at 71 years old and you have a stroke and you're never the same again, you would be pretty sad to know that you just took your Social Security at 70 and now your life, which again, at least you are still living, but you weren't able to mitigate that time period in between when you first retired and when you started taking Social Security. You didn't actually know that your life would be cut short. And maybe that same person, 5 years later, they die. So they have a stroke at 71 and they die at 76. That's mortality risk. It means they never got to the break-even point. Now, to be fair, we don't really know this, but it is very real and it's very common. We all have stories of people who retire and the next day they get cancer, or they retire and they have a heart attack. Now, again, this cuts both ways, but that is a risk you are taking if you were delaying. Just realize that it's a risk, acknowledge it, work through it, and maybe decide if that is worth you taking it earlier or later. Now, the second one is very close to it, and that's health span. So say you had that stroke at 71 and you still live to 90, but your life between age 71 and 90 is not the same life you live between 60 and 71. That's the whole concept of health span. So meaning, even though, say you took Social Security early at 62, you had less dollars because you didn't allow the benefits to accrue, but what you got out of those dollars during that health span was invaluable. So those are the things that you want to think through, because even though if you were to be functionally dependent during the ages of 71 and 90, even though you have more money because you delayed to 70, you cannot use it in the same way. The other concept that may be worth explaining here is the flexibility that you may gain by having Social Security turn on earlier. Now, what do I mean by that? If you delay Social Security, remember, let's just use 60 as an example. You have an entire decade that your portfolio has to shield any income that you need. So meaning you are fully exposed to any return sequences. I've already talked about that. But what is the result of those sequences? It's that the portfolio might draw down unnecessarily. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be gone. It just means you may not have the flexibility either during that time or later. But let's think about that decade. Let's think about 60 to 70, or maybe 60 to 75. If you're married and you have grown kids, they might start having their own kids. If you have aging parents, you might want to take care of them. If there are other things you want to give to, or opportunities that come around once in a lifetime, you just don't have the flexibility if your portfolio is unnecessarily drawn down to help with those sorts of things if you waited for your Social Security. Now, the other argument would be these risks that I've mentioned so far outside of mortality risk may not be as big of a deal, and that's definitely where this video is obviously not personal advice. It's not a personal financial planning or investment advice. So for example, the person that has the $5 to $10 million portfolio, they're not so much worried about sequence of return risk. They're not really worried about when they take in Social Security. So some of this is a function of how big is your portfolio relative to the monthly income need. The next thing I want to talk about is underspending risk. I think this one is definitely probably not talked about enough. They've done many studies, and just my viewing clients through my job as a financial planner, I have noticed if people have guaranteed income, they are much more comfortable spending it. So if you know that you will either underspend or you will be tempted not to spend if everything is relying on your portfolio, that can have a meaningful impact on your life. So this again goes beyond math. So I think knowing yourself and knowing some of these risks can be really important when you think about Social Security timing. Now, I'm going to just throw in 2 extra bonuses here at the end. 2 things that are probably not talked about enough when it comes to Social Security. Even though Social Security is generally irreversible, you do have a 12-month period where when you take it, you can change your mind. Now, the downside is it's once in a lifetime, and you have to give back all the money. But if something happened and you just realized, I made a mistake, you do have a one-time get out of jail free card where you can actually reverse your Social Security. Now, here's another thing. If you've reached full retirement age, you can do what's called suspending or pausing your benefits. So say you started taking it at 65 to 67 and something happens. Maybe it's you find a passion project and you start getting paid part-time and you realize, I don't need this Social Security income. You can actually pause it, and from age 67 to 70, it will earn those delayed retirement credits of 8% a year. So there is some flexibility there. But I do think that it's worth considering why you should take Social Security early. I realize that's cutting against the grain of, in my experience, the most dominant viewpoint of most retirees, which is to wait as long as possible, which there can be some good reasons for. But I want to at least present the argument. I'd love to know what you think. Please comment, are these some risks that you thought of? Are there some that I left out? Are there ones that you're thinking of? I want to know what you think. So please, I'd love to see what your thoughts are on this. Like, subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.